North Korea, recently North Korean government said that nuclear issue will not put negotiation on the table, negotiation table. So, what do U.S. expect to talk with North Korea without the negotiation about nuclear issues?
Well, we don't have any conversations that are ongoing with North Korea. So I'm not exactly sure what you mean. Now is not the time. Our policy hasn't changed. Now is not the time to sit down and have talks with North Korea. At some point, if and when they're willing to be serious about the issue of denuclearization, we would be happy to entertain that, but we're nowhere near that point yet.
But it seems like they just talked for the talks, but not putting any nuclear issues put on the table.
Well, look, I think it's pretty fresh that the Republic of Korea and also the DPRK are having conversations. We just saw the second one take place yesterday pertaining to the Olympics, and I think that's a good sign. And it's an excellent sign that the United States, with 20 plus countries, are up in Vancouver right now, where we are exploring additional ways to enhance our maximum pressure campaign. We've seen that campaign be successful. We know, and as has the Republic of Korea's Mr. Moon has indicated this as well, without that maximum pressure campaign that so many countries have been involved with, North Korea would not be having talks with South Korea. Granted, limited to the issue of the Olympics, but that is a start. So today, one of the things that the Secretary is doing is having a lot of conversations with those countries about how we can better enhance the maximum pressure campaign to get North Korea to denuclearize. An important thing for us, and I think it's an important sign that so many countries were present to show up to see what they can do to better help. Okay, hey, Nicole. Are we? Let's stay on DPRK for now. Yeah. Okay.
So we're almost a year into President Trump's tenure, and arguably the most pressing foreign policy challenge he's had has been North Korea, and yet we still don't have an ambassador in South Korea. Mm-hmm. Why not, and what can you say about that?
Yeah, this is something that we've covered before. We have a charge d'affaires in South Korea, Mark Napper. Mark is a longtime Foreign Service officer. He's beloved by many people in this administration and also at the State Department. He's been to North Korea numerous times. He speaks quite a few of the languages of that part of the world. And so we are confident that our embassy there is in good hands. It is ultimately up to the White House to determine the nominations for any post. You all know that. I know that the Secretary and the White House are working hard to determine more people, more qualified candidates to take those positions. I can't get out ahead of the White House and announce anything, but I can tell you we are in good hands. When I talk to any of my colleagues here, because certainly I've asked the same question, why don't we have this? Why don't we have somebody there? And folks love Mark Napper. I've spoken to him myself, or at least have emailed with him, and I'm confident he's doing a great job. Okay. Anything else related to Asia?
Okay. Yeah. Just on the format of today's talks, obviously the Chinese and the Russians have denounced this meeting in Vancouver as a Cold War throwback. They're based on the countries that fought China as well as North Korea between 50 and 53. If you're trying to maintain an international front, total solidarity for the maximum pressure campaign, is it not just a mistake image-wise to meet with the people who went to war against China?
I think Russia and China can call it whatever they want to call it. It is clear, and the bottom line with that is both of those nations signed on to 3 unanimous UN Security Council resolutions. Both China and Russia share our objectives, and that is the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. They do not want to see Kim Jong-un develop a nuclear weapon any more than the United States or any other country does, for that matter. So we are all on the same page. They're not at the meeting, and that's okay. They can call it whatever they want.
Can I go back to the Palestinians just for 1 second?
Let's come back to let's finish up Asia, and then we can come back to the Palestinian thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not that. It's different.
Okay, go ahead, sir. Hi.
Thank you. Nice to have you back.
Thank you.
So last week, Steve said that the United States has been in touch with China and Russia regarding the Vancouver meeting. Is President Trump's phone call with President Xi Jinping yesterday a part of this touch, considering the timing of the phone call?
Yeah, I think that would certainly be considered part of it. Among the things that the president spoke with President Xi about was talking about the hope that they might prompt a change in the behavior of the DPRK. We consider it to be destructive behavior. They consider it to be destructive behavior. President Trump committed to sustain the United States-led global campaign of maximum pressure to compel North Korea to commit to denuclearization. So I think that that is a part of our ongoing conversations.
And did they talk about this Vancouver meeting specifically?
The White House provided a readout of that phone call, so I just have to refer you to the White House for that readout. Okay? Okay. Anything else related to DPRK, Japan? Go right ahead. Bye.
Nice to have you back.
Thank you.
Just about Iran, I think President Trump's announcement last Friday didn't make it quite clear that President Trump again decertified about Iran's compliance with the treaty.
Okay, so
I
we're moving on to Iran. Did anybody else have any other questions related to DPRK? Anything related to that? Okay. We'll come back to that then, sir. Okay, so to your question about Iran and the president, as you know, the president extended the waivers on some of the sanctions for another 120 days. That's to provide time for the administration, in conjunction with members of Congress, to come up with legislative language to work harder on legislation that would help try to pull Iran into better compliance and look to being tougher on Iran. So that is something that the administration decided. Some of those conversations, from what I have been told, between Congress and the administration, they're making some pretty good progress on the legislation and some of the language on that.
But I think also just every 90 days, President is supposed to notify Congress that whether Iran is just in compliance with the treaty or not. So the January 15th is supposed to be the latest deadline. So is there any decisions or just
I'm not sure that today is
15th.
if that's
Actually,
is
that's
that correct?
Monday.
But that was the announcement that the president made on Friday.
I think these are two different things. It's like
Let me get back to you on that. Okay. Thank you. Okay. What do we?
I just want to go very briefly, because I have a feeling that you're not going to have an answer, but just need
I
to
love
make-
how you always say that. I have a feeling you're not going to have an answer as you look down your nose.
You're going to
down your
say,
nose.
I think I'm going to predict your answer. We're not going to comment on every time another leader makes some crazy remark, some remark. That's my
Okay,
prediction.
you
later.
might be right, Matt.
Okay, so this is a Palestinian. So you're probably aware that Palestinian Authority President Abbas gave a very, very critical, harsh speech about this administration,
Yes.
about the president, and about, in fact, other Arabs. I'm wondering what your response to that speech is.
I think in listening to that speech, and you're right about that, but I can say clearly emotions are running high. Emotions are running high in the region, and we certainly accept that. I'd like to caution folks in the region and Mr. Abbas that some of those words, some of the things they're saying would be considered inflammatory, and they might in fact be unhelpful and divisive. We would like to see a peace process go forward. We've talked about that a lot. That's something that's important to this administration. But we know that tensions and emotions are running high. We would just caution them on some of the language, because we'd like to see both sides be able to come to the table and talk.
Okay, and just to put a very fine point on it, this decision on UNRWA today is completely unrelated to that speech.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. All right, let's move on to something else. Let's move on to something else.
Pakistan.
Sir. Okay.
The Turkish military began shelling Kurdish positions in Afrin province in northern Syria. What is the U.S. position as its NATO ally is shelling its number one ally in the fight against ISIS in Syria?
Okay, I'm afraid I don't have anything for you on that.
So, wait, so are you saying
I
there's-
don't have a specific report on whether or not we can confirm that is taking place.
Okay, well,
Okay.
along the same lines, there's also been the announcement of a border force consisting primarily of Kurdish militias allied with the U.S. in the SDF along the Syrian-Turkish border. And President Erdogan called it a terror army and said he would strangle it before it's born. So, this is another place where there's kind of a contradiction between two U.S. allies. So I'm just wondering if the U.S. has a position on this.
Well, Turkey is a very important and valued NATO ally. We have a lot of interactions with the Turkish government. As you probably know, the foreign minister of Turkey is in Vancouver right now, where I believe he will be meeting or have some sort of a chat with Secretary Tillerson, or at least some of our representatives later today. So an important NATO ally. In terms of what is going on in Syria, the United States is in Syria to defeat ISIS. Any activities that we take part in with regard to the Syrian Democratic Forces is something that's internal only to Syria. And I say that because it is important that we defeat ISIS, that we make sure, and when I say we, I say that not just on behalf of the United States, but the entire coalition, the 72 or 73 member coalition, the importance of not letting ISIS take root the way that they had before and further destabilize that country. So that what the United States is involved with regard to the Syrian Democratic Forces, or the SDF, is that to defeat ISIS. That is solely what it is for, the internal purposes of defeating ISIS.
I think Under Secretary Goldstein gave us that in a fairly informal gaggle. So if you could get formal language.
I'll see what I can do for you. As you know, I wasn't here last week, so I'm afraid I just don't have the specifics of that.
Well, I just one more on this. I'm just wondering, I'm curious if there are people in this building who are concerned that these reported comments have hurt the mission of the State Department, have hurt the standing of the United States abroad, particularly in Africa and potentially in Haiti.
Look, I'll go back to what I said a short while ago, and that is our relationship, our diplomatic relationships with countries all around the world. Those relationships are stronger than any one alleged comment. Okay. And when you ask me about tweets, I will say again, our relationships with nations are stronger than any one tweet or alleged comment at any point.
That sounds
so people want to look at it as though it's just one small slice. We have a much broader relationship with these countries.
But it sounds as though you're saying don't just ignore this kind of thing. Look, whether it's a tweet or a comment like this that has been
I'm just telling you, we have a strong relationship. We honor and value our partnerships with these nations. The Secretary looks forward to traveling to the continent. We loved hosting the 37 or some nations who came here. So we have a valuable relationship. And I think those countries understand that as well.
But so you're saying that the leaders of other countries, officials of other countries should pay no attention to what the President of the United States says.
Countries can pay attention however they choose to. I'm just telling you, from our point of view, our relationship is strong with nations. We continue to have conversations. We are active in their communities. We have people on the ground. We have probably thousands of people who work on behalf of the State Department in the many countries on the African continent. That work is very important to my colleagues and to this building, and that hasn't changed. I'm going to have to leave it there, guys. Okay. I'll take your question afterwards. I'll take your questions afterwards. You got to go.